Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual event. We're just giving it a little bit more time, maybe 5 to 10 more seconds for everybody to join in because we're still seeing some of them coming in. But in the meantime, I would like to share a couple of reminders for everyone. So we would love to know who you are. So please do rename yourself on Zoom. Just your name followed by your organization. If you can't find it, the rename option is when you click like the participant button on your Zoom screen. Next, just like interact, we would love it if you would interact. So feel free to add your comments or any inputs you may have about the discussion in the chat box. But please do keep your comments to the discussion at hand. And of course, we're going to have like a Q&A portion to the discussion. So if you have any questions about the topic, just drop in your questions at the Q&A feature on your screen. I think it's either at the bottom or at the top. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, it's a sunny day here in the Philippines, right? Where I'm currently at. So we'd love to know where everyone is. So do feel free to add it in the chat box. Let us know where you are and if it's also sunny. All right. I think we could start, right? Let's get this started, okay? All right. So,
Chat is disabled. Yeah.
yeah.
We'll get somebody to check on the chat.
Oh,
The chat is disabled.
sorry. Chat seems to be disabled. Hang on. Let me see. Okay. Yeah. Fix that in a bit, but let me just get this going already. We have like all of our like more than what we need to get started. So, um hello again everyone. Welcome to today's virtual event Beyond the Name Creating Compelling Brand Stories That Resonate. I'm Lyra from E27, and on behalf of the team E27, I'm thrilled to welcome all of you to today's event. So let me talk a bit about E27, how we actually came about this event, right? This topic specifically. So let's start with this number, right? There are 75 million businesses in Southeast Asia alone. So the weight of this number is clear whenever we talk to like startups and corporates and other tech ecosystem players. And like over the course of our discussions with them, of our conversations with them, the need to stand out is always mentioned. Because if you're a business, right? If you're a business, the one of the things I really think about is how to be seen, how to be heard, and how to connect with the relevant people. And like these conversations, we love having these conversations at E27 because for us, like, right, our mission is to empower you with the tools to build and grow your companies. And we do that by giving you visibility across the region, sharing with you information that is relevant and that matters to your business, as well as access to fundraising and market access opportunities and networking and having the opportunity to build relevant connections, which is why are having this webinar, because the webinar is one of the ways that we're addressing some of these issues that you as companies face. So today we have the honor of bringing together like this incredible panel of experts to share their insights and their best practices to help you craft powerful brand stories that don't just connect but resonate deeply with your audience to help you stand out from like the sea of competition. So we hope that this session really equips you and then you find valuable, actionable takeaways from it. So without further ado, let's head on to why we are all here. Um, I'm handing over the screen to our moderator, Rosie Ramirez.
Hey, hello everybody. Thank you, Lyra, for setting the stage for a discussion today. And I'm so glad everybody could make it. So today we are going to dive into the art of storytelling and how it can transform the way brands connect with their audiences. So we have an incredible group of panelists who have made it their mission to tell meaningful stories that resonate with audiences and convert customers. So let's all welcome Frank Nang, VP for Growth at Intellect. Say hi, Frank. Hello.
Hi
Uh,
everyone.
we have Joel Wong, Director at Social Jet Singapore.
Hi
Hello.
everyone.
And Junie Ten, Head of Social Media and Marketing Communications at Dynamite Lab.
Hi, everyone.
All right, so I know you're all excited to meet them, so I'd like to invite our panelists to tell us a bit about themselves. So tell us a bit about your work, and to start us off, how do you define a compelling brand story? So we can start with Junie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Junie. I'm the head of social media and marcom at Dynamite Lab. So we are basically a social media agency in Malaysia. We are the ally of explosive social media solutions, and we dedicate to help brands craft compelling stories that truly connects with audience across platforms. We have privilege working with brands of different sizes across Asia region, from multinational giants like Alibaba Group, Bosch, to local names like the Malaysia Deposit Insurance Corporation, to help them elevate their brand and strategies across social media. I'm honored to be here today to share some of the insights and learn alongside with everyone here today. So, as Rosie's questions, how do we define a compelling brand story, right? I think a brand story isn't just about what we sell, it's also about who we are, what we stand for, and how do we connect with people on a deeper and more emotional level. I think it should explain the brand's value and engages people. And it should make people feel something. It's not just about facts, but the emotions and connections that truly resonates and stay with them over time. I think people are more likely to remember details when stories are communicated in a message form rather than just facts and numbers. And I think ultimately a good brand story cuts through the noise in this saturated digital space. It helps to resonate across cultures, and it should also inspire engagements and also build brand loyalty to a certain extent in this competitive market today. So yeah, so that's what I think a compelling brand story is.
Thank you very much, Junie. So let's go over to Joel now. Same question, just tell us a bit about your work and what makes a compelling brand story.
All right, thanks, Rose. Hi everybody. I'm Joel. I currently run Social Jet Singapore. So my background is primarily in e-commerce, social media, and also paid socials. So currently, past several ventures include a homeowner portal, a clothing line that we distributed in the US and EU. Social Jet was created 3 years ago. So currently, helping a lot of brands with the influencer content, social media content. So that's what I'm dedicating my time right now at. So in short, we are a creator agency focused on driving growth for brands through short form content. So platforms like Xiaohongshu, Instagram, Meta, TikTok, and more. So yeah, specializing mainly in short form content, a bit more direct response, ROI driven. We have over 1,000 creators on our network in Singapore alone, onboarded. We help brands with our proven framework to create content like that. Happy to be here. I hear that there's marketers, business owners, even VCs on this call. Sorry, Rose, what was the question again?
What makes a compelling brand story?
Compelling brand story wise, if I look at it through the lens of social media, I think for most brands, especially also on this call, I think most of the consumers will hear about you from social media. I think that will be our first touch point. So whether it's on organic social or paid social, that is where people will first get to see of you. So I like to tell, a lot of my clients, also team members, that people trust people, not ads, right? So I think the question is also more about how can content creators, how can influencers, or even your customers play a role in echoing a brand story? Because it's one thing to keep telling people what your brand is about, but it's another thing when some other people outside of a company share their perspective about your brand. So I think a lot about human connection. A compelling story is always about involving emotional connection, making your brand more relatable and memorable. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Joel. And finally, we go over to Frank so he can introduce himself. And to answer also the same question, what makes a compelling brand story?
Thanks. So I'm Frank. I look after commercial growth at a locally founded company called Intellect in Singapore, but of a global scale. So currently we work with more than 3.7 million members globally to provide top quality mental health care benefits. The simple thought would be we wanted to see a world where, on one hand, we typically have affordable or even free mental health public services. On the other hand, good quality but usually expensive psychiatric or clinical psychology services. One is, affordable, the other is fast, but you don't normally get both together, meaning both cheap and fast. So we wanted to find a world where someone like any of us can get the right access to mental health support for free and within 1 to 3 days. And that sounds like a world that, it's too good to be true. We have, more than 200 plus clients in the world having such benefits, including global companies like ByteDance, Shell, Now, and so forth. And in Singapore, the whole public service as well. So a bit about the question, I think the other two, I think more or less answered it. But I guess to add on, if I use analogy of the US election, right, regardless of your political affiliation, brand story is about knowing who you are, right? Not just talking about the other person. No matter what you think about the other person, you think that your company is so great, clearly it's better than others, but you can't just say, I'm not that guy. You stand up for who you believe in and a clear identity for yourself that resonates and emotionally connects with others.
All right. Thank you, panelists. So from that first question, we know that you all feel that humanizing the message is the most important thing. And I like what Joel said. People trust people, not ads. And of course, Junie and Frank also talked a bit about knowing who you are and what you stand for. So that's a good way to set the stage for our discussion. Just a reminder, we are accepting all questions from the audience. Do put them over in the Q&A button over there. I saw somebody send a question through chat. Thank you also for that. But we also have a Q&A button so we can see everything there. We'll try our best to answer as many questions as possible, but just send your questions in. We'll see what happens in the discussion. So now we'll go into the main questions for the event. Our first question is for Frank. So you just told us about Intellect. How does Intellect use purpose-driven storytelling to build trust and make its brand identity unforgettable in the mental health space? I know a lot of people are very interested in mental health as well. So how do you build trust there?
Yeah, great question. So I think I could share more specific examples in future questions, but to keep it short, I think at Intellect we wanted to do a core philosophy of building the pie as opposed to trying to eat more of the pie, right? So essentially what that means is instead of snatching market share, we wanted to ensure we build the entire market. And there are many implications for your brand identity and storytelling, right? So it means a lot less about, why Intellect sells this, Intellect has this, but more so like what does good mental health care, access, relatability, stigma-free environment, right? Answering all these key questions for our buyers, our clients, the ecosystem out there, and really sort of taking, where relevant, of course, our brand away from certain things and stamp instead neutral authority. So a great example is in Singapore, for those joining us from here, we have a local national framework around mental health. And we wanted to essentially showcase how Intellect essentially helps any of our partner organizations and companies map purely and entirely towards that framework, but without saying that this is an Intellect service, right? So we have all these neutral sort of infographics, documents and content out there that we proactively share with our clients to say, right, national framework, how do you look at it? Right, new tripartite guidelines, how do you solve for it? Right, and those are shared more on a consultancy best practice basis. And last, I think is of course bringing in the person that's driving the actual story, which is the clinical provider, right? It's not me, not the founders, right? But it's actually the clinicians in the platform, the clinical responsibility that falls on the supervisors in that area. We're fortunate to have amongst many of our strong clinical team members, our VP of Clinical Intellect from Dr. Sundaman. So he is a world-renowned researcher, clinical psychologist, and we use his story right? Why did he join Intellect? How is he building us to lead in the forefront of mental health research, outcomes, and of course, programming, right? And really utilize that to showcase to companies like, we're not just here to earn money, right? But we're here with a clear vision about where we believe the mental health space will become, many implications for you. Here's how we'll solve that.
Right. So you show the people behind the brand and who you work with in order to build that trust. And don't snatch the pie. They bake a bigger pie, perhaps. Okay. So I'm gonna go over to Joel now. Social Jet Singapore, you specialize in a lot of influencer marketing, right? So how can brands ensure authenticity in their collaborations with influencers to maximize impact?
I think number one, of course, definitely when we talk about authenticity in influencer collaborations is finding highly relatable influencers. So not just looking at how many followers or top line metrics they have or even the engagement rate, but more about whether they're relatable, whether they're brand aligned, right? Then after that's all settled, I think we want to probably look a bit more into their data, right? The two things that we try to look out for probably is fake followers and also wrong audience. So I think nowadays with influencer content, there are a lot of fake followers in the industry. It's very easy to get bots to follow you and very quickly as well. So I think red flags is audiences that are not within the origin country of the creator. So if the creator is from the Philippines or Singapore, Malaysia, right? Then I think we ideally want to have most of their followers in their base country. And then of course, if from the brand side, if your product or service is only in Singapore or the Philippines, right, then most of the followers of this influencer should primarily be in this region. If not, yeah, you're just burning ad dollars or wasting money on that. So once all that is ironed out, I think once all the top line metrics, the internal metrics are reviewed, then I think on the content side, letting the influencers drive the content. So for us, we've experimented both A/B side, A/B testing side. We've given influencers our framework to create the content, and then another side is we tell the influencers exactly what to do from start to finish. And I think it's no surprise that when creators are given the expressive or the freedom to create and express their own content in their own style, typically that will perform much better. Whether it's a higher rate, higher rates where people watch to the end of the video, but essentially giving them a top line framework, but allowing creators to express it in their style. That will help definitely make the content look much more authentic, much more relatable, and it will definitely maximize impact. I think finally, if I can add, I think a lot of brands typically try to, squeeze in a lot of their USPs, their brand stories into a very short, let's say 60, 70-second video. I think a lot of people these days, they do want to hear about every USP, every feature about your product or service. So I think keeping it short and sweet definitely helps. Attention span these days is on social media is like 3 seconds. So if the hook is not there in the first two seconds, I think you experience a huge dropout rate in the video views. So yeah, I think that's how we can make it a bit more authentic and impactful.
All right. So it's really about creating that space for freedom for the creators themselves because we also trust them to know their audience. I'm going to go into the perspective of dealing with larger brands now. Junie, would you say it's easier or more challenging to create emotionally engaging narratives for large global brands? Can you share a technique or approach that you would use for this?
I think every brand, regardless if it's global or local, has their own unique sets of challenges and opportunities. And with social media platforms available for basically public, everyone can get into it quite easily. It is easier for brands to tap into local context, and also local brands will go global. So in a good side is that it's easier for a lot of brands and businesses to be out there, but there are also challenges for brands, regardless if it's global or local. So for example, global brands usually they will have a more well-defined value and a more established recognition, giving us a more solid foundation for storytelling, right? However, the challenges are usually like, how can we ensure that the story is universally relatable yet culturally relevant across all the markets? And also, like, how can we strike a balance between maintaining consistent global message and tailoring it for local markets at the same time. And for large global brands, there's always risk of telling stories that feels a bit too generic, making it a bit harder to forge genuine emotional connections with the local audience. So these are the challenges that I think as a global brand would face. And usually what we will do is that I think like three key steps that we will usually look into. The first one is always start with a common ground in humanity. So, for example, we always focus on what is that shared human experience that everyone can relate to. Like, for example, the joy of celebrating milestones or the drive to keep growing, and let that be the heart of our story. So it connects with people no matter where they are from. And then the second step is that we will always make it personal and make it to have local touch with the local audience by weaving in local lingo, slangs, cultural beliefs, and at the same time having all these local elements, we also have to keep the core brand message so that it makes the story feels like it's crafted just for them. It's about showing how, as a brand, we understand and respect your culture. And by doing this, we are not just making the message relatable, but also memorable on a personal level. People can feel that personal touch by incorporating all these local elements in the storytelling approach. And I think another very important aspect is also to look into data-driven insights, and also the sentiments that we receive whenever we are, let's say, curating content on social media or doing any sort of initiative to convey the brand message, right? I think all these data that a brand or a business receive from social media would help us to understand better of how it actually resonates with the audience. Are people responding to whatever that we are doing or not? Are people having good feelings about it by us looking at the sentiments that we receive? So I think these are the things that we should look into, and also how we could actually approach, how we can actually share more engaging brand story to the audience. I think one of the very interesting example I always like to share is we did this campaign for Alibaba Group last few years, and I think Alibaba Group that time right after the pandemic, they are the first. When they first enter the Southeast Asia market on social space, they always want to convey a very clear goal to connect with the local audience across the Asia markets, right? But how do they do it? Because in Asia, there are so many different cultures, especially the Southeast Asia market. Every market is very similar, but also very different at the same time, right? And with their mission to make, their business mission is to make it easy to do business anywhere. And with that mission, what we did was that we actually find the common truth behind it, right? So we found that actually every business will face different struggles and different challenges no matter what stage they are. Same goes to startup, right? And based on what we observe across the Southeast Asia market, I think inspiring business stories is something that a lot of audiences, no matter they are in business or not, would like to listen to, right? I think in Malaysia, it works this way. Singapore and also other Southeast Asia market also have very strong sentiments and good performance around all these stories. So with that in mind, we actually shared stories of local businesses that is related to Alibaba Group. For example, some of the clientele that they have, and how Alibaba Group have actually empowered them throughout their business journey. Let's say, what are the struggles that the group has actually helped them to overcome? What are the solutions that they actually subscribe to and actually help them to elevate their businesses? So these are the stories that we shared on social media to help them to convey their brand story and their brand message. So with that, I think in a more casual way of conveying their value would help people to remember them better, rather than just telling, oh, this is the kind of services that we have and this is how we can help you. So using a different approach actually helps a brand's name to be a little bit more established and resonates with audience better. And true enough, I think this kind of content has become one of the best performing content pillar for the social media channels of Alibaba Group that we have been managing, and because this also conveys clients' mission and values very clearly, I think it has been something that we have constantly been doing over time, and all of these content actually can relate to the audience very well. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Junie. That was a really good discussion on localization. I see an interesting question here, which perhaps is related to, as someone who is chronically online, I have experienced brand fatigue from companies and influencers I like, but they keep pushing out content and ads. How can brands continue to be relevant but not teeter on the obnoxious side? I see Frank nodding. Frank, would you like to go first?
Right. No, I just thought that it was it was a good and funny question. I don't have a immediate thought about it right now, but if I had to tackle it, I guess it's really true, right? Like I think what I always remind my team is that I think beyond just online, I think it's useful to remember that us as consumers are in permanent objection mode. So for example, when I walk into the mall, I am unconsciously objecting to walking into a shop, buying snacks, getting new shoes. Right? I can do any of them at any time. And there is some form of call to action that the shop front, that whatever else is saying, right? But I'm saying that no, I'm just gonna get, what I came here for and come back. And why did I do that, right? It's because no one busted my objection. Right? No one said like, oh, you actually do need new shoes. Oh no, you should get, a new haircut. Right? So how do we bring objection busters out there? I think on YouTube, I've seen the best ones because they are forced to think about how to manage the skippability or skippable time, right? So in the first 6 seconds, for example, unfortunately, I can't remember the brand name. It's maybe not a good example, but a really good creative AI company always sends me ads about like problems that we marketers face in the workplace, right? Super relatable stuff, right? Like designers getting upset with marketing briefs, like getting too many requests from the client, or too many revisions from the client. And they talk about, obviously how their platform solves all these things, but not just from an AI point of view, but from a human point of view as well, and touch on a layer of like, what can you do with AI and what can't you do with AI. So I find it a really relatable one, and it always breaks my objection. I have sent that platform to my team, but we haven't pushed it yet. So I don't know whether we have bought it, but yeah.
All right. How about Joel? What do you think? How do we keep content fresh? And I know you're in that space a lot because of influencer marketing. How do we not be obnoxious?
Well, the truth is, I think like what the question pointed out, right? There are a lot of obnoxious influencer content out there. It's just part of the game. We've seen a lot of such content as well. Sometimes we roll our eyes, sometimes we laugh, sometimes we remember it, sometimes we discuss it internally as well. But I think how to not get overwhelmed. What can brands do? Honestly, every brand I know, that is successful on the digital marketing strategy, they always have an influencer or content strategy, whether internal, in-house, or external. So every brand is putting out some form of short form influencer content, whether BTS or external influencers that they hire. Really, I think it's just to be very authentic with your messaging. Don't make it boring, make it entertaining. I know it sounds very easy to do, but I think a lot of brands they tend to be a bit more corporate and formal with their content. And I think for brands that can make it entertaining, make it fun, make it social first, those are the brands and the content that really sets out, differentiates between the good kind of brands with the strategies and the bad ones, and also influencers that can do it well and influencers that are just, reading off a script, for example. So yeah, that's how you can try to sort of stand out in the crowd, because it's getting indeed increasingly noisy on social these days. And yeah, as it should be.
All right. Junie, do you have anything to add to that?
I think I agree with what Joel say about like influencers. They can like sometimes just read out a script, and these are the things that actually make people feel like, I have enough of this. And these are things that, I mean, cringe content are things that make people feel like, stop doing this, right? And it also doesn't look good on brands and businesses who's trying to promote or like trying to share what they are doing, right? So I would say what, as a brand, what can be done is that when we have a message to share, always think about, for example, 10 ways to tell the same message in an entertaining way, right? That is something that is simple to do. I mean, as simple as it sounds, but it may take a bit of creative juice to actually really think like how this entertaining content, how these 10 different entertaining content could actually connect with different audience on social media. Because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times why people are feeling bored and also like obnoxious about brands keep pushing out content is because things are very cringe and they don't want to keep seeing cringe things that appear on social media. Social media is something that it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be entertaining. It's something that, let's say, for example, IG, Facebook, TikTok, these are the places that we want to see fun content and we just want to chill. It's not a space for people to like see your ads, like, oh, I'm selling this, I'm selling that, this is what I offer. But it's more of like, oh, what is fun today? So I think about it as how we can push out entertaining content and in different methods while consistently sharing the core message would be something that help the brand to constantly relate to audience without making the brand feels, like, oh, we are trying to sell you something. Yeah.
So we talked so far about a lot of the hows and the whys. There is a question here that I was also planning to ask. Besides social media, websites, and other digital assets, would events be a good channel for companies to tell their brand story? And other things, what platforms or content formats are good for brands and to maximize the impact of their campaigns? Maybe we can start with Joel this time.
Yeah, great question, Rose. I think I tackle the first one, right? For the event side, I think as soon as your brand start to scale your marketing strategies, then outside of just your digital strategies, definitely will help to drive some brand awareness and brand visibility with a physical in-person event. So let's say your brand just launched a new product collection, or you guys just launched into this new market. It will not hurt to combine your digital strategy with an in-person, right? So host it with, let's say, a thought leader in your country. Bring on some influencers. I love influencers and how they play a role in marketing. That's why I keep talking about influencers. A good example is maybe I'll share about an anti-hangover supplement client of ours based in Singapore. So we helped them launch in Singapore in the market when they had zero audience, zero social proof, right? So we managed their content on social media, on Instagram primarily. Created a lot of social proof content from various profiles, various creators, testing different scripts, testing different USPs. And then once that was done, we launched an event, right? And this event wasn't boring, right? Because number one, this product is anti-hangover supplement. So essentially, if you guys don't know, you take this supplement, it's like 2 pills or maybe a jelly format. You take it, you drink alcohol, you party hard, you wake up with lesser hangover symptoms. I take it. I think it works. But anyway, we did an event where we did it at a nightclub in Singapore. So of course, complimentary because with anti-hangover supplement, you drink alcohol. Best place to do it at a nightclub. So we invited DJ Jovin, quite popular in Malaysia. So flew her down to Singapore. I think it was like Jovin's first or second event in Singapore. So I think a lot of people came down for her. And then of course, we pushed the client's brand over there. And it went really well, right? It was a event that was very relatable, very complimentary also to the product that we were trying to push. We sold a couple of boxes also at the event itself. So maybe that's an example I can share. Yeah, I think I see a chat group here. Yeah, Nissan was also there in the chat. Yeah, he was there also with me. But yeah, it went really well. I think the second question about the platforms, right? For me, different platforms, of course, carry different benefits, advantages, disadvantages. So LinkedIn, of course, targeted towards B2B professionals. TikTok, more for the younger audience, more towards short form content below 30 seconds. No longer just for dancing, of course. Then YouTube, we're talking about more longer form, more targeted towards engaged audiences. Instagram, more for lifestyle, more aesthetically pleasing content. And then your other platforms have different benefits like Pinterest, X, Xiaohongshu, Facebook. Those have different nuanced benefits as well. But yeah, it really depends what your brand is trying to say, and who you guys are trying to outreach to, and more importantly, what is the content that you're trying to put out, because then that will determine, which kind of platform might be the most suitable.
Well, just a follow-up question on that, Joel. I know that you work with some generative AI. Is that a platform that you think resonates with audiences despite it not being created by humans?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different third-party tools that one can use, right? Of course, OpenAI is one of them. We use Discrete, we use HeyGen, we use some Chinese software tools as well. I do have a video, maybe I can play it for everybody here later. Yeah, but Gen AI, of course, is also a huge talking point these days. I think at this present stage, with different models, I think you produce very different results. For us, we are not exactly using it full on yet. We're experimenting, but at scale, I don't think we're ready yet. And also because with the creators we work with, those kind of content always performs better than, I guess, your generated AI videos. At least for now, but I think it's only a matter of time before technology takes a front seat, and then I guess manually creating videos might be soon a thing of the past. But yeah, that's probably to be determined.
So, when it comes to messaging, this is a question for Frank. What are effective strategies to shift public perception of a service when there's a stigma or a misunderstanding about the product's purpose, which is a very important question because you're in the mental health space.
Yeah, good question. And I think really good questions overall on the comments. Quite too many to answer, right? I think in short, really go nuclear, right? To be honest, like just go as far as possible as you can in a certain direction, and as I said, establish your identity there, right? Don't try to be neutral. Don't try to be catering to too many people. So I can think of many examples offhand, but quick one I guess to Intellect is because we had the chance to win Best App of Google in 2020, and that's how we really grew quite large. A lot of people think of us as a tech company and app, even though we are much more than that, which I can't share all today. So in order to sort of showcase that we're not just an app, not just a proactive service that for a bunch of video content, we do a lot of like Joe mentioned earlier, things like events, but also really an integrated strategy to drive home last year's messaging, for example, that we are also a very strong, robust clinical safety net with in-person clinics, with men helpline and things like that. So what do I mean by go nuclear? It could be things like you find your target audience and you literally send packages of direct mailers, which can look, for example, like a phone box, like a little box with a whatever look like like a phone. You open it and then it has the information inside about why having the right approach and quality management for a mental health hotline is going to be critical for your employees to be the right safety net, right? So they won't think about you as an app anymore, right? You literally bombarded them with the image of how that looks like. Same thing, you can do the same thing but blow it up 20 times bigger at a conference, right? And then it becomes even more in your face. So I think that there's many examples, but really just go like with a very strong point of view would be my simple answer. And maybe I'll just add one last example to that, to the question on like, channels and things like that, both relevant. So one, when I think I was at Uber previously, while a lot of my background and work has been in digital marketing, I think Uber really taught me the importance of, above the line TVCs and so forth. Another example of going nuclear is our Cannes winning Australian Open campaign in Australia for Uber, specific for our sort of food delivery product. So you would be, an Aussie watching Australian Open, TV break is over, you come back to the Australian Open, Rafa Nadal is playing, he hits back a ball, misses or goes out or whatever. Then he goes to the side, goes to the ball boy. For some reason the ball boy hands him an Uber Eats order. And then suddenly the referee or the official is like dinner violation. And it's basically takes you out of how did we do that? Obviously only for big companies, right? But we essentially bought over specific space from Australian TV, Channel 7, Channel 9, to even use their commercial transition legally in our TVC. We obviously were literally live at Australian Open itself. We were filming with Rafa Nadal and the real officials and his real opponents as well. So it was exactly like Australian Open, but an Uber Eats commercial, right? So that's exactly where you go nuclear, right? And you essentially say like, we are a dedicated Australian first food delivery service. We know your local interests, humor, and things like that, right? And allowed us to establish our monopoly in the Australian market. And actually, if I recall correctly, it's our second largest food delivery market globally for Uber today.
All right. So to sort of wrap up that discussion, I have another question for Junie here. With all the changes that we are witnessing on social media and the way we interact with each other, how do you adapt brand stories to stay relevant? Did I lose? Oh, Junie, sorry, can you hear us? Oh, maybe not. Okay, I'm gonna jump. There's another interesting question. It's sort of related. How can brands craft messaging that resonates with two different audience groups? How do you balance speaking to a product that perhaps appeals to a student, but their parents are still the decision makers? Uh, oh, perhaps Junie is having audio issues. Maybe Joel can answer that one. Yeah.
Sure. Rose, can you repeat that question?
So for example, it's really a social media question with all the influences that we are receiving. How do you adapt your content to different audiences? How do you adapt your brand stories to stay relevant today?
Well, that's just a very quite an open-ended question. It really depends on, of course, industry, product, service that I guess your brand is primarily in. I think from there we can probably look at what will make sense for your industry, right? Of course, looking at what your competitors are doing and trying to avoid what has already been done on socials. And then, of course, if you look outside of just influencer marketing, outside of just digital strategies, what else can be done, right? I think OOH, like what Frank also mentioned previously. So there's so much things that can be done in order to stay fresh. But I think most importantly, when we use trends, trend jacking, right? Whatever is relevant right now, using it in a way that is relevant, that is also brand aligned, and not just jumping into any trend just to stay relevant, right? I think that's probably could be quite a common mistake for a lot of brands, just doing everything like what everybody's doing. Yeah.
All right. There is. Oh, is Junie, can you hear
Hi,
us?
sorry. Yeah,
All
sorry,
right.
my line lagged for a bit just now. Yeah,
Okay.
so so regarding to your question about how do we adapt brand stories to stay relevant, right? I think a few things to look at. The first thing is, of course, to be flexible. As a brand, of course, like we have to stay true to our core. We have to always remember like what value that we are trying to bring, but always be ready to tweak our story as the trend is changing. New platforms are popping up every day, or like audience are shifting their preference. Like whenever there's new things coming up. So this could mean that we should also look at like what are the formats that are coming up and how can we adapt into like let's say different social media formats in terms of like content formats, right? Can we interact with them using all these different formats by telling the same stories? And I think social media isn't just a content outlet; it's also a tool to amplify um, your broader marketing and brand initiative, ensuring that our message can reach to the right audience effectively. Like what Joel mentioned just now, aside from all these social media, digital marketing, offline is also something that like brands could actually look into. Um, and I think ever since after MCO, after the pandemic, a lot of brands have also shift their focus from like having ATL, BTL ads into offline and social media focus. So be flexible as time change and as circumstances change. We will not have the same budget, or like we will not have the same platforms for 10 years, right? Things will always be changing. So be flexible and also respond to sentiments and your audience changes in real time. So whenever we notice that change, that shift in interest, always respond to them and react with them, so that they could feel the relevancy still with the brand and stay connected with the brand. Yeah.
All right. How about traditional companies? How do you get them to adopt new and engaging branding methods? Maybe you can start with Frank. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
Right. I haven't been in a traditional company. But if I had to convince someone, I think there are other questions that are all around it, right? So someone else asked like, how do you get and convince, traditional company CEOs to invest in long-term brand building instead of direct sales? It really is to use metrics that are as close to the business as possible, right? So this is not impressions, view through rate, reach. These are important for marketers, by the way, but these are not meetings that convince CFOs, right? What will convince CFOs and CEOs are things like brand search growth, total brand lift on platform, total brand lift third-party measurement, market share, competitive SOV, which could be web SOV, PR SOV, social SOV, right? All these things translate directly long-term into revenue if your message is correct, and would be a way of convincing. Other way I think look at it could be framing it as the cost of inaction, right? Instead of what you can get, think about what you would lose if you don't do it, and then use one or two examples that clearly showcase, right, that there were two companies, traditional, one went on a certain path, the other didn't. What was the cost of inaction for the company that didn't, right? And then showcase like how this led to reduction in market share, profitability, and things like that. I think people care about those things. Anecdotes, profitability, market share. These are daily questions for CEOs.
I'm going to jump to a question that a lot of people are asking, and it has to do with metrics. What metrics do you use to track and measure the outcomes of your content and campaigns? I'm sure all of you have different thoughts on this one. You can also talk about like indicators that you use that would indicate that you need to change your strategy. Who wants to go first? Maybe Joel, you wanna?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Rose. So on metrics, right? I think measuring campaign effectiveness. Again, I'll come at this with the lens of influencer campaigns or influencer-led campaigns. I think tracking is one of the harder things to do when it comes to social media influencer content. I think a lot of marketers agree that trying to attribute data specific to influencer content is getting a bit harder. We talk about organic content, influencers can only place a link in bio or maybe a link in caption, and in the caption it's not directly clickable until you run a paid ad. So I think number one, don't just stop at organic. Once the influencer goes out with that content, they post it to their audience. I think very important is that brands must utilize also paid media to drive the content, amplify it further. And then once paid media is involved, we can have way more metrics in the campaign, right? Of course, you talk about conversions, bottom line metrics, app installs, for example, if you're running a consumer app, sales conversions, if you're an e-commerce store, if you're a more B2B, maybe more towards lead generation. So I think those bottom line metrics can be a bit more accurately sort of measured once we run paid media with the influencer content. And then, of course, I think other stuff that is not exactly tangible, maybe a bit more on the vanity metrics, like brand awareness, trust, credibility, different engagement, and of course, most importantly, for marketers, a lot of insights that we can gather from a campaign, right? Apart from just bottom line metrics. And then also I've spoken to different brands where they ask, what is the benefit of having influencer content out there? How much sales can it bring me? How many leads? How many app installs, for example? I think apart from just those bottom line ROI, right? I think we're also looking at, of course, content that lives on social media more or less forever, right? When people search your brand up, when people, find different relating content of your company, they could, chance upon different influencers that are already speaking about you. So I think a lot of intangibles that can be calculated with a successful influencer campaign as well.
All right. Junie, how about you? What are the metrics that you recommend people track?
I think aside from the usual numbers that we're tracking, all the engagement, reach, impressions, and all those things, right? We should also look into the sentiments, and of course, before all this, we should also consider what is the objective of whatever content or campaign that we're running, right? Are we trying to increase brand awareness? Are we trying to increase sales, or what sort of conversions are we actually looking at? By measuring the measurements based on the objective, that would be a more straightforward way. But like I said, sentiment should also be one thing that we should put into consideration, because that would give us a better idea of whether what we are doing are we on the right track or not. Because sometimes numbers could be, the numbers that we see could be something that looks very nice. You see a lot of good numbers, but is it positive? Is it negative? Are people talking about the brand in a good way, or people are actually bashing the way that, oh, this is not something that I like? Because there are a lot of keyboard warriors these days, right? People like to comment for the sake of commenting. So we need to evaluate based on those. And so then we can know that how are people responding, and do people actually like it? Do people actually not like it? And we can actually further adjust our future campaigns or future content based on those sentiments.
And anything to add, Frank, on metrics?
Not really. So I think I shared most of the 5 different metrics earlier that are mostly relevant to the business. I think if any, my last submission to this would be for marketers to remember that honestly, awareness is not important, right? It's actually mental availability. We are all aware of many, many things at any one point in a time. But what's the heuristic that we have to consider buying certain products, right? Like today, if you have a pain for you have a headache, right? Do you think of Panadol or do you think of something else? That is mental availability, right? It means that you have an association built in a specific neuron in your brain with a specific brand or product. So your goal is simply to make yourself the mentally available one. For example, I used to sell Durex. The awareness of Durex versus Okamoto is almost the same. 95% of people know Durex and Okamoto, but the mental availability of Durex is nearly 20 times higher, and that reflects on our market share.
All right. Well, we are just about on the last few minutes of this webinar, but let's give our audience something to think about or carry with them. What is one piece of advice you would give to brands looking to start or refine their storytelling journey? Just one nugget of wisdom from you guys. Who wants to start?
I can go first.
Thank you, Junie.
I think most importantly for brand is to stay real and also be fluid to adapt. In today's fast-paced digital, I think people are really looking for real and relatable connections online, right? And also with brands and businesses. To be authentic, to actually tell a story that truly reflects what our brand value is, and then be ready to evolve as trends, as technologies, and also audience expectation shift with time, right? And I think keep our storytelling flexible, whether is it shifting formats or jumping into new platforms or tapping into new cultural moments, right? Always stay true to what the brand stands for. And I think authenticity is something that would help brands build trust in the long run. Yeah.
All right. Joel, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think echoing what Frank said, right? Apart from just brand awareness, because I think a lot of brand builders these days, trying to get as much noise online. I think it can be a bit more targeted. You don't have to reach 100,000 people when you do a brand launch. You don't have to reach 10,000 people, right? Say you can get a very targeted, 1,000 people, for example, or even 100 people that can try and test your product, try and test your app, your platform, and then you get very valuable data and, sort of use that to drive 2.0, 3.0 campaigns down the line. I think that's already very, very valuable rather than immediately, trying to penetrate the market, when you immediately launch or doing so much stuff to make noise online and offline. So yeah, I think stay focused, stay lean, start with something small and then scale from there.
And final thoughts from Frank.
Yeah, similar to what Joel echoed, I think stay lean, right? Meaning that always think about that minimum viable first step that you can test your brand story, your message. It doesn't have to be a big, you know, Australian open level idea. Always find validation, whether it's your focus group, your user interview, your user survey, performance marketing analytics, or web analytics, right? You want to test your message as soon as possible and as quick as possible. And of course, not just get the quant, but the qualitative insights as well that tell you how to move forward, right? To keep it short, two very brief examples was in Uber. We had 99% brand awareness in Japan, but market share pathetic. We finally spoke to someone, and the first thing they said was like, "Oh, I'm so used to street hailing. I don't see any usefulness for any form of digital cab hailing," right? And it's like may sound like, "Oh, isn't it obvious that it's easier to book a cab on your phone versus the street?" But actually, it wasn't to most Japanese people at that point in time, and you just have to solve for that simple brand story.
All right. Thank you, Junie, Frank, and Joel. And thank you to our audience. You're very engaged, and thank you for sending us all your questions. It has been a great less than an hour with you. As we wrap up today's session, I think it's very clear from all our panelists, storytelling remains the heart of meaningful brand connections, even in our fast-paced world. And well, it's always the key is always to remain audience focused, flexible, and authentic. So clear, successful storytelling starts with clarity of purpose, and we always need data, creativity, and genuine connections. Don't go anywhere. But before I hand you back over to Lyra for the last part of our webinar, let's take a quick photo for the socials. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for joining E27 at Beyond the Name webinar. And back to you, Lyra.
Thanks, Rosie, and many thanks to our panelists, Junie, Joel, and Frank. I would just like to, if you guys would like to connect with our panelists and would like to know more about their respective companies, feel free to, wait, let me share my screen a bit. Scan these QR codes to connect with them. And I would also like to briefly share that beyond today's session, there are plenty of ways we at E27 can help amplify your brand, right? Whether through various media and innovate projects, even through our own events. Echelon Singapore is happening next year, in June 10 to 11. And even through our contributor program, where you could start in your own words, telling your story to reach thousands of E27's audiences. So if you want to know more, we'll be happy to share. You can just scan the QR code and our team will reach out to you. So stay tuned for more of events, activities, and opportunities for you to learn, connect, and grow with the vibrant startup tech ecosystem. Follow us in our socials to learn more and be updated. And thank you once again. We look forward to seeing everyone in our future events. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.